Good morning, my friends. How are y'all today? Well, I'm going to try to do this relatively quickly. There's only so much I can say about this subject. I wanted to define the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath. I did quite a bit of research the other day just to make sure that I could clarify this and make sure that I had it accurate, because there's a lot of dispute in even the psychiatric community about exactly what is a psychotic person compared to well, I'll just start off and explain my point. The term psycho is well known. Look, we have a movie about it, right? And a person who is psychotic, let's say psychopathic, if you will. A psychopathic person, a psychopath by nature, is someone who feels no emotion, someone who feels no empathy. The interesting thing is that when you hear the term psychopathic and sociopathic, at least for me, I always would tie in the psychopathic with the violent person, and the sociopath with the person who's just suave and trying to take advantage. Now here's the difference in a nutshell between sociopaths and psychopaths. A sociopath is someone who plays or preys on society for his own gain, who will lie, cheat, and steal to get their way, yet they're well aware that what they're doing is wrong. This is what makes a sociopath so much scarier than a psychopath in many ways. The psychopath by nature is born with the genetic defect. The sociopath, let's say, was raised with certain conditions in their life that caused them to be that way. It's almost 99% of the time, I guess, you can look back at a sociopath's life and see something that happened to them in their youth, whether it be a parenting issue or otherwise, that caused them to be the way they are. And caused them to think that, they need to take advantage of society. Whereas the psychopath is actually born with a part of the brain not functioning properly. And that's the part of the brain that deals with emotion and empathy. So when a psychopath does something wrong, they can only pretend that they're aware that they're wrong. Charles Manson was most likely just a psychopath. And when people look at him up on trial and say, how can he show no remorse? How can these people not show remorse for what they've done? It's not their fault. They're psychopathic. They can't feel emotion. I feel so bad for them. Can you imagine what it would be like to not feel emotions? Of course not, because you can't not feel emotions, because that's all we do is feel. But the scary thing is that the psychopath will pretend. They'll really pretend to have emotions, and they'll pretend to show remorse because they want to show what they're supposed to be showing. But it must be a scary proposition to be pretending you care about something that you don't, and not knowing how other people can weep or understanding why other people have joy either. Because if you're not weeping, you're not having joy. And that's a pretty scary thing too. But the sociopath is actually more prone to violent outbursts of anger and violence towards spouses, or siblings, or otherwise. So the sociopath is a violent person, or can be. They're very spontaneous and they'll lash out and get angry. So you might say that a sociopath, in a way, could be bipolar in some regards, or at least appear that way. I think that the sociopaths of this world, you see, they're often the ones who take up positions like CEOs. I guess the incidence of sociopathic people in types of jobs like banking and, presidents and CEOs is somewhere around, like they say, 4% compared to like the 1% to 2% for the world average. So there's obviously people of a certain mindset are seeking certain positions. So we have many of these sociopaths in positions of power, and this reflects back onto the society of which they're part of. And I think that's something we need to be aware of. That our leaders are not our representatives if they don't represent our values. And they might represent the values of some of us, but we don't have to agree with everything they do. But we should really analyze the people that we have in our lives that are in charge of us, if you will. Whether it be our teachers or our bosses, and look for these behaviors that may show that a person is able to pull one over on somebody without caring. I mean, a lot of people have done bad things in their lives, but you usually feel regret and guilt, and then over time you realize you don't want to do that again, because you'll feel shittier about doing something bad than you could ever feel great about gaining something. I mean, I know that I could go out and steal things from a business down the street or break into some, anybody could in society. We could all go down and break into a big factory and steal a bunch of goods and make a bunch of money. Why don't we? Because we know it's not right. And it's not because we've been told it's not right. It's just because we know that it's, taking other people's things is not, that's not reasonable. That's not what we do. That's just not what we should do. But people who have no emotions, they don't have this sense of right and wrong. So I just found that interesting and wanted to share it. And I also wanted to throw in one question that came up after I was researching this, which was, does the psychopath have an advantage over humanity, over the rest of the people? Does the psychopath who has no emotion have any advantage because of that? I'm not saying yes or no. I'm really just asking. Like, if human evolution created a species that was super intelligent, but wasn't hung up on worrying about other people or other things, or right and wrong, then that individual could do very well for themselves. Although in the back of their minds, they would, success is all that might matter, they would never stop and look back at things and say, oh, I should or shouldn't have done this, because without emotion, you're not going to regret anything. But ultimately, you're going to live and die the same life as everyone else. And it goes down to the old, he who dies with the most toys wins. Who really wins when they die? You can't win. We all lose. But how do you want to go out? You want to go out loving and caring, and having those who love and care about you. So I guess that, no, there would be no advantage to being a psychopathic society. Eventually we would kill and destroy ourselves, because without that altruism, we would self-annihilate, at least in my opinion. So I guess that's it. Hope you all have a great day.